My name is Jaray, and I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I've been there for about 30 years. And prior to moving to Colorado Springs, I was in law school in Columbus, Ohio, and I was really fortunate to go to law school in Columbus for several reasons. One, I met my wife there, which was great and unexpected. And secondly, I had the opportunity to become involved in a program called the Night Prosecutor Program. And this was back in 1976. And in 1976, for those who were practicing law or around then, you would recall that there wasn't much in the way of alternative dispute resolution processes. And I think maybe I was destined to go to Columbus, Ohio to go to law school because of the fact that they had this program. I didn't know that particularly, but I soon found out that it met my personality very, very well. And I was delighted that I had the opportunity to go to school there. After the first couple of months, I was introduced to the director of the Night Prosecutor Program and applied for and got a job with the Night Prosecutor Program. It really was a program put together by Capital University. One of the professors at Capital University, John Palmer, wrote a grant to the Justice Department. Back then it was the Law Enforcement Assistance Association. It gave out money for alternative dispute resolution programs. And so Professor Palmer wrote this grant and got some money to start the Night Prosecutor Program and to see whether there was a way to resolve, in this case it was minor criminal disputes, and ultimately we went on to resolving some civil aspects of bad checks and so forth. But basically neighborhood problems, minor criminal disputes, and it was a way that we could bring the parties. The Night Prosecutor Program brought the parties together to talk about the problem that existed, and instead of going to the traditional court system, we brought them together in a mediation fashion, using mediation techniques, and resolved the problems. And in 90–95% of the cases, the problem was resolved, the case was dismissed, and off they went. And it was very, very successful. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to become the training director for that program, and as a result of that, got to travel around the country somewhat and help other communities start either night prosecutor programs or what became the Neighborhood Justice Center concept. Again, the government was willing to fund some of this process, and I found out about an opportunity to come to Colorado Springs back in 1979. When I graduated from law school, I had gone to undergraduate school in Boulder, just up the road from Colorado Springs, and decided I wanted to move back to Colorado. So there was someone in the Pikes Peak region who wanted to look into a neighborhood justice concept. So they wrote to us at our program. We got a lot of requests from places around the country. And my director said to me, got one from Colorado Springs. I know you're hoping to move back there. Maybe you want to respond to them. And I did. And I ultimately moved back to Colorado Springs and helped them set up, back in 1979, helped them set up the Neighborhood Justice Center, which is to this day, some 30 years later, an ongoing program of the District Attorney's Office. And we did the same things in the Neighborhood Justice Center as we did in the Night Prosecutor Program. We resolved minor criminal disputes, neighborhood disputes, and also had wonderful success. It wasn't anything magical other than getting two people together, having them talk about the issues, what happened, what do they need to see done to repair the harm or resolve the dispute. And as I say, in 90 or 95% of the cases, people were willing to do that. So I worked with that program for a year or two and got the funding, got the program started, did the community development, and was delighted to see that program get off the ground. I went into private practice in 1980 and practiced in the area of personal injury. And back in those days, early days, I did a whole variety of things: criminal work, personal injury work, whatever the two lawyers that I worked for wanted me to do, I got involved with. One of the people that I worked with was an arbiter, and he did arbitration work, labor arbitration, and I had a strong interest, of course, in arbitration and mediation, and he was a great mentor for me in helping me continue the use of both arbitration and also mediation in my practice as I started to develop some skills and so forth. It was just great to be with two people that appreciated the fact and understood the need to incorporate alternative processes to the traditional legal process. So I did that for a couple of years, and have continued to practice law for 30 years. This is my 30th year of practice. But in between that, I had a mediation program that helped families with divorce mediation. I participated. It was called Family Mediation Associates. There were 3 of us that had a divorce mediation program. And as part of that effort, we worked together with our local judiciary to implement a local rule, that suggested that we as lawyers, needed to consider some type of alternative dispute resolution process prior to going to court or prior to litigation. And the court adopted the rule, and lawyers had to gradually understand that that was just part of what they needed to do. And it became a generally accepted practice, with some pushing or encouragement from the courts that people would consider alternative dispute resolution as part of the dispute resolution process. I went on to work for the Judicial Department, the Colorado Judicial Department. We have offices of dispute resolution in various judicial districts, and in the district that I work in, we had a very active Office of Dispute Resolution, and I worked with them for about 6 years handling civil mediations, personal injury, real estate, a whole variety of civil work. I did that part-time while I was practicing law full-time. And just, there was a lot of reward, a lot of personal satisfaction, if you will, for me in helping parties come to the table, talk about what they needed to talk about, and walk out shaking hands, oftentimes walk out with a hug, depending on the situation. And I really enjoyed doing that and still enjoy doing that work. Back in 2004, I had an opportunity to attend a restorative justice conference. Probably one of the most significant aspects of the conference was listening to a woman by the name of Pat Robinson. And Mrs. Robinson, unfortunately, lost her daughter about 10 years prior to the conference. She lost her daughter not by accident, but she lost her daughter because she was murdered. And Pat talked about the trauma that she suffered for 10 years. And you can well imagine the trauma of a mother finding out that your daughter had been murdered. And it really just ate away at her. She told the story about how difficult it was for her. One day, I think she had heard about a restorative justice project, and she decided that she was going to create an opportunity where she could meet with the offender and find out and listen to, why did he do it? Answer some of the questions that she had. What was going on? Why did he do it? Why did he pick her? What happened that night? Did she suffer? She needed the answers to those questions. And through a process that she was able to arrange, she got to meet with the offender. Fortunately, and I assume this was pre-screened, actually I believe it was, the offender at that point was willing to take responsibility for his actions, willing to explain, willing to apologize, willing to ask for forgiveness. And Pat tells the story of meeting this gentleman and how frightened she was initially, of course, about doing this, but that slowly she started to develop a bond with this person. She started to develop some empathy and understanding about this person. And he apologized. He explained. And she describes the healing that took place because of this process. She said, finally, after 10 years, I can move on. I can close this chapter. And it was very powerful for me. It really resonated with me that if she could do that, I mean, under one of the worst circumstances of anybody, if she could do that, imagine how we could apply that in other areas, in other problems, in other disputes.